Welcome everyone to No Huddle, the show where I will be keeping up and predicting everything that will happen in the NFL season. Let's just get started right away. The NFL season is about to come. Kickoff is just a couple of days away, so I wanted to start everything by predicting every single division in the NFL, all the playoff pictures for both conferences, who is going to win Super Bowl 60, as well as all the individual winners of all the awards. Let's get started right away because I just can't wait for this season to start. So here I have the script for the 2025 NFL season. My good friend Roger Goodell decided to hook me up for me to start this entire program. So everything you will see here is 100% going to happen. Put all your money on it. Don't do that. I don't want to be responsible for any of it. But we'll start with the AFC division, starting with the AFC East. I have the Jets at fourth because, I do think that Aaron Glenn is going to be a good coach. I just don't trust that old talent, that old guard and regime that was still there, and I don't believe in Justin Fields as a capable passer. The Jets will have a lot of situations where Justin Fields will have to win them games by throwing the ball, and I don't think he's that capable of doing that. But I think the Jets will have a half-decent year. The Patriots were seen as the offseason winners for most of the NFL world. And while I do think that Drake May is going to take the leap, the free agency and draft moves should pan out, and Mike Vrabel is a proven and good head coach. I just think that their floor is lower than the Miami Dolphins, which, talking about them, assuming Tua doesn't miss over half the season and their quarterback play isn't absolutely putrid without him, they have a really, really high floor. They still won 9 games while not being able to run the ball at all, and with the backup play without Tua being absolutely terrible. So I think that the Dolphins could still win 9 or 10 games with that core that they have. And the Patriots they have a ceiling of 11 wins, but they still have a floor of like 6 or 7 wins. That's why I think I would rather have the steadier option in the Dolphins. But this division is still run by the Buffalo Bills. They still have the best quarterback, the best overall team, the best head coach, the best fan base, arguably. Like, we all know who the Bills are. They're one of the best teams in the AFC. I had them as the number 3 seed in the conference, and we don't need to talk about them in a regular season scale. Everything about them will be defined in the playoffs. Moving on to the AFC North, I have the Ravens topping it, the Bengals second, the Steelers third, and the Browns fourth. Talking about the Browns, I'm not a fan of them. All their quarterbacks sucked, and even now that they're down from 6 to 3, I still don't trust any of them. Joe Flacco's too old. Dylan Gabriel is just a rookie. And Shedeur Sanders, with that cult-like fan base, he might be the most overrated player in the league. And I'm saying this as a guy who is kind of a fan of him. But overall, I just don't think they have enough pieces for them to win enough games. Like, Myles Garrett is only going to get them so far, especially with him being a little bit older now. The Steelers, I don't know what to think about them. I just don't know what Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin have in the tank. If this was 2017, I would pick them to be like a contender. But now I feel like this could be the year where they finally falter and have that first losing season. It's weird betting against history, but I just don't get a good vibe from the Steelers team. I also don't get a really good vibe from the Bengals. I trust Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Higgins to keep that offense on a high level. I trust that the running game and offensive line will still not be very good, and I know that the defense will still be very mediocre, but they should get better from last year. The real key for the Bengals is not starting the season 1-3 or 0-4 or something like that. If they start with a losing record after 4 games, Zach Taylor should be fired, because I think that the Bengals will finally win that one key game at the start of the season that will propel them into the playoffs. That's why I have them as a number 7 seed. And at the 1 seed, I have the Ravens. I'm really high on the Ravens. I think Lamar is still an exceptional quarterback. Derrick Henry's amazing. They still have the weapons of Zay Flowers, Bateman, and Likely. And the real key is their defense for me. Their secondary could be legendary, maybe the best since the no-fly zone. I know that might seem hyperbolic, but you have Malachi Starks, Jair Alexander, Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, and Kyle Hamilton. All of those guys are Pro Bowl caliber players, in my opinion. And in the playoffs, you have to neutralize these amazing quarterbacks in the AFC. So I think that the Ravens will be able to do that, and it will propel them to being the best team in the AFC. Moving on to the West, I have the Chiefs at 1, Broncos 2, Chargers 3, and Raiders at number 4. I don't think they'll be a bad team, the Raiders, but with all the overhauling that they did with Geno Smith, Janty, and Pete Carroll, it'll take time to adjust, so I think they'll start the season really slow, but I don't think they'll be a bad team by any means. I was way higher on the Chargers at the start of the offseason because I thought they would still have Rashawn Slater, but that injury really brought them down from second to third in the division. But Herbert should still be good. Amari Hampton, I think, is a promising pick. And their defense, if they can replicate a bit of the form that they had last year, maybe not number one, but if they can be top 10 at least, this team will still be really steady. And who knows, they might actually win their first playoff game. The Denver Broncos are, I think, an up-and-coming team. Their defense is already incredible, obviously led by Patrick Surtain. But their offense, I think, will be the key for them making that next step from last year. Bo Nix finally will be a lot more polished. He's not going to have the early season stinkers. And I think they'll even compete with the Chiefs for the division until like week 16 when they'll finally pull away. And speaking of the Chiefs, I have them at number 1 and as the number 2 seed in the AFC. Patrick Mahomes is obviously still there. That core of players like Chris Jones, Kelsey, Mahomes, and obviously Spags and Reed, they're all there. So the Chiefs probably have the highest floor in the entire NFL. The only thing that makes me think that they're going to be the number 2 seed is that they were 12-0 in one-score games last year. And I think a couple things are going to go not in their way compared to last year. So instead of winning 15 games, they might only win like 13 or 12 or something like that. Doesn't mean that they'll be a bad team. I just don't think they'll run the AFC like they did last year. And finally, to round out the AFC divisions, we got the South. This is definitely the weakest one. The Titans, I have them at 4. They're just not a very talented team. Cam Ward, I think, is going to be good, and we'll see what the Titans have in him. But I don't think we should expect absolutely great things like a Jaden Daniels or a CJ Stroud rookie year. The Colts, we should definitely not expect anything here. I have them at number 3. They may have the 2 worst quarterbacks in the AFC. Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson both are very inaccurate and kind of turnover prone. If there's 2 minutes left and they have to win a game via a quarterback drive, they're definitely going to lose because that offers such a low ceiling and such a low floor with those 2 guys. So I'm not high on the Colts whatsoever. I actually am kind of high on the Jacksonville Jaguars, though, because Trevor Lawrence should get better. Keyword is should. Under Liam Cohen, still having Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, I'm really high on him as well. I think he's going to be one of the best rookies in the NFL. And assuming he takes a leap, I don't think that the Jaguars are going to make the playoffs, but we're definitely going to see a lot of improvement. And I think they're ready to become a playoff team potentially next year. The Texans are first because one of these teams has to be first in this division. I'm not very high on the Texans because their running game and offensive lines will still be an issue. The only reason I have them winning and why I think they can maybe contend is because CJ Stroud is still a really good quarterback and their defense is really, really good. They'll be in games. They'll be able to win games, especially in this division, because the defense will be able to suffocate all the other opposing offenses, and CJ Stroud will be able to do just enough with the little time he'll have to make the plays to be able to win. But compared to the other 3 division winners, the Texans are definitely the weakest. Moving on to the AFC playoffs, this is the bracket that I have based on the seedings that I'm predicting. I think that the Chiefs, against that faulty Bengals defense and obviously an Arrowhead under a playoff atmosphere, they'll be able to execute more than Zach Taylor. The Bills are just really, really good in the wild cards and earlier rounds of the playoffs. They're not going to falter even with the Chargers being a good team. And I think the Broncos, if their defense is as good as I expect them to be, they're going to absolutely suffocate that bad running game and offensive line that the Texans will have. So I think they'll be able to win that. In a rematch of the 2012 playoffs, the Ravens will prevail again on the back of the great secondary, picking off Bo Nix a couple times. And I know this may sound like a broken record for the past 2 years, but I do think this is the year where the Bills beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. Everything has happened eventually. Brady eventually lost the Super Bowl. Mahomes eventually lost the Super Bowl. Nothing is forever in the NFL. So I think that this streak will finally end next year. But don't count on it because this could be the prediction that ends the worst. So my AFC Championship game is the Bills versus the Ravens, a rematch of Week 1 on Sunday Night Football, which should be a really, really fun game. But my AFC winner is the Baltimore Ravens. Might be a little bit boring because they're the number 1 seed, but I still think that The home field advantage will help them a lot. I think Lamar has finally proved that he can play well in the playoffs. If he minimizes his mistakes, or even if he doesn't actually, his team is good around him. His defense is good enough to be able to give Lamar more breaks. Like if Lamar turns the ball over once, I think his defense will be able to forgive him and make that stop, which they weren't able to in these past couple years, especially against Josh Allen and Mahomes. So I think that will finally propel them to make Super Bowl 60. Now to the NFC, we have the divisions, NFC East, the Giants. Honestly, I didn't know whether to put the Giants or the Cowboys at 4 because this could be very reactionary to that one trade, but the Giants are still not very talented. Their quarterbacks will be very, very inconsistent. We don't know what we'll see from Jackson Dart, and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are definitely not what they were before, like 3 years ago. But they still have a good defense, so I think they'll definitely be one of those upset teams that ruins other teams' weeks for every once in a while. But their defense will only take them so far. The Dallas Cowboys are the pure opposite. The Cowboys will have a good offense. They'll basically be like the Bengals from last year because their defense will be so putrid. They're going to get absolutely dominated on the time of possession battle because they can't run the ball either. But Dak isn't Burrow. Pickens might not even be T. Higgins, and CeeDee Lamb is definitely not Jamar Chase. So there'll be a worse version, probably win around 7 games. All this with a rookie head coach. I'm really, really low on the Dallas Cowboys. The Washington Commanders, I have them being kind of stagnant because I don't know how much their offseason additions actually help them. I think Debo is a good player, but I don't think he's going to be an absolute game changer. This isn't 2021. And Jaden Daniels, will he be better than his rookie version? I think so, but I don't think he's going to be like an MVP caliber quarterback. And with how good the NFC is, I think they're just going to stay as the 6th seed like they were last year. But I think without that Cinderella magic, we won't be as surprised when the Commanders are still good. But Philly still runs the division, in my opinion, and I think they still run the conference. They still have the most talented team. They have the most rabid fan base. We already know that. But they still have Saquon, Jalen Hurts, the 2 receivers. Their defense, they lost pieces, but they still have the key guys like Bond, Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. And while they did lose Kellen Moore, their offensive coordinator, Jalen Hurts has played with many offensive coordinators and has played well with all of them. So I think that the Eagles will not really lose a step. I still think they're going to be the number 1 seed in this conference. And I mean, there's not much else to say. Now to the NFC North, the Bears are at 4, but this is probably the most stacked division of the NFC. Now Ben Johnson is here. It will take time to adjust, I think. They're not going to start firing on all cylinders right away, but Caleb Williams could potentially have the greatest quarterback season in Bears history, which doesn't say a lot, but this will be the start of a new era for the Bears, where they maybe start contending in a couple years. The Minnesota Vikings are a very polarizing team, in my opinion, because we don't know what we're going to see from them because they have a rookie quarterback. But I have them as number 7 seed because I just think these guys in their division are just so stacked. They'll struggle to finish at the top of it. But I have them making the playoffs because I think Kevin O'Connell is an amazing quarterback coach. We saw him turn Sam Darnold into a all-pro caliber player. And they still have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, which provide a really, really high floor for a quarterback, even if he's just mediocre. I have the Detroit Lions at 2, and I had them at 1 before the trade happened, but we all know that the Packers are more stacked on defense now. But speaking of the Lions, they're still so talented on the offensive side, and now with the return of Hutchinson, they're going to win a bunch of games just on the talent alone. And even though they lost their coordinators, I trust Dan Campbell to still be able to rally the Lions to a really high record. It'll probably be a case of like last year when the Vikings won 14 games but got second. The Lions will be a really good team, just not as good as the Green Bay Packers. I trust that Jordan Love is going to take a leap. He's not going to regress like he did last year. Matt LaFleur is still an amazing coach. And now they have Micah Parsons, who's maybe the best defensive player in all of the NFC. He's going to win them a couple more games, which is why I have them up top as the number 2 seed. And they're a legit contender to maybe represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. That's how much I think Micah Parsons changes the course for this NFL team. Now to the NFC West. This is maybe the hardest ranking to do because I think all four of these teams have a chance to be in whatever order you want. But I have the Seahawks at 4 purely because I am not a fan of Sam Darnold. I think he might have been a bit of a product of the KOC system as well as Justin Jefferson and Addison. I think now with just Njigba and Cooper Kupp and not as good of an offensive coach, I think he's going to definitely regress, and I think it's going to affect the Seahawks a lot. The Cardinals, I think I'm kind of high on the Cardinals. They finally addressed their pass rush, which was very, very bad last season. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to have a much better year. That connection that he has with Kyler Murray will be key to their offense being good enough to win many NFL games. If that connection is still not there, then we're going to have to actually start asking questions. But I just don't think that the Cardinals' ceiling is high enough to contend for the playoffs in this moment. The 49ers are a very complicated team because I think this core is still very talented. It's talented enough to win games, but it's still the core from 2021 and 2022 and 2023. I think now in the year 2025, they're not going to be absolute juggernauts yet, and you still can't trust the health of some of their players like Christian McCaffrey, who have a history of being injured. So who knows how they turn out. I still think they'll contend for the playoffs, but I still see them not being good enough. And finally, I have the Rams winning the division. This all predicates on Stafford being healthy or not. If he actually has a bad back and misses time, then the Rams might actually finish the bottom of his division. But assuming he plays around 14 games, the Rams are still going to be good. They have Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, some of the best receivers in the league, and they still have a guy like Jared Verse on the defensive side that can win them a couple of extra games. So even if Stafford is out, I still think they have a chance to contend for the NFC West title. And finally, the final division is the NFC South. This is definitely the weakest of the conference, similar to the AFC. I don't want to talk about the New Orleans Saints. I'll talk about them in a bit in another segment, but just know that I'm really low on them. They'll definitely be one of the worst teams in the league. The Panthers, they'll definitely see improvement, but improvement in the way, well, they'll probably win like 7 games, but it'll actually look competitive in a way. Bryce Young will definitely take a leap to being a more Pro Bowl caliber player. He's not going to look like a bust like he did some of last season and his rookie year. But I just don't think, they just don't have the talent enough. I don't think they have enough talent to actually compete for more wins. The Falcons, I think, actually do have enough talent. They'll definitely be contending with Tampa Bay for this division, but I think I trust the Buccaneers core more than I do the Falcons. We still don't know what we'll see from Michael Penix Jr. We could see good play, but we could also see inconsistent play. Bijan is an absolutely insane running back, and Drake London is one of the best receivers in the league. But if Kyle Pitts actually doesn't have that leap, they might have to trade him because Kyle Pitts right now is one of the biggest busts in NFL history, in my opinion. If they can get actual production from him, then the Falcons can actually take that step and make the playoffs. But I'm fighting with history on this team. I just don't think they'll be as good. They'll be kind of the same as last year, just with slightly better quarterback play and a better vision for the future. And the final team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have them finishing at number 3 in the AFC, or the NFC. Baker Mayfield is just a dog. That's the way to describe him. Chris Godwin's going to come back from injury. Mike Evans is still the same player that he is. Bucky Irving is such an electric player. And Todd Bowles has honestly rewritten his entire legacy from being kind of a fraud to, I think, being kind of underrated in the NFL world. I think Tampa Bay is going to stay as consistent as they've been for the past 2 years. And I think they'll definitely be a scary team. I would definitely not want to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs. Speaking of the playoffs, we have my bracket here in the NFC. I think with Lambeau against the rookie quarterback, the Packers will easily take care of the Vikings. I think in a rematch, the Buccaneers fix their mistakes. There will be no Cinderella magic for the Commanders this time, and the Buccaneers take revenge on last year's wildcard game. And the Rams are not able to avenge their wildcard loss from 2 years ago against the Lions. And I think the Lions will prevail because Stafford, even if he's still healthy, he'll be absolutely beat after 17 games. And Aiden Hutchinson will definitely feast. In the divisional round, I have the Packers winning over Tampa Bay. I think once again in Lambeau, they'll control Baker Mayfield Micah Parsons will have a few key plays that will lead them to the NFC Championship game. And on the other side, I think the Eagles are just in Philly, maybe in the snow like it was last year. I think the Eagles just have a better ability to execute over the Lions with that core that they have. And I think their defense will come up with key turnovers like they did last year. So this leads to the NFC Championship game, a really, really good one if this actually happens. This would be a rematch of Week 10, Packers at Eagles. This is the tush-push war. Whoever wins this controls the destiny of the play, in my opinion. Packers at Eagles, but my NFC champion is the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that defense is still capable of generating many, many turnovers with Zach Bond, with Jalen Carter. All those guys have the ability to make a play at any given moment. And with Jordan Love still having some of those tendencies of just being a gunslinger and just throwing wherever he wants, I think it's going to rear his ugly head like it did last year, and they'll be able to generate enough turnovers for Jalen Hurts to overcome the Packers' suffocating defense of McKinney and Parsons. So I think that the Eagles will return to the Super Bowl in an all-burn matchup, but my Super Bowl 60 winner is still the Baltimore Ravens. Like I was saying when I was previously talking about them, I think Lamar Jackson's going to finally get rid of all those narratives of him being a playoff choker, and he's going to cement himself as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, maybe even a first-ballot Hall of Famer on top of being a two-time MVP. This is going to be the Lamar Jackson legacy year. I'm not even a Ravens fan, but I'm just really, really high on Baltimore. Moving on to some of the individual awards. This is not for Lamar, unfortunately. The MVP, I believe, is going to Josh Allen, and I'm playing the narrative game on this one. I think if it comes down to Lamar and Allen, like I think it will, the voters will not want to see Lamar win 3 while Josh only has 1, because I believe that those two players are such of equal caliber that they'd rather see both of them have 2 than one of them have 3, and the other guy having 1. That's why I think if they both have historic seasons where they're just both amazing quarterbacks, they'd rather give it to Josh so he levels on Lamar than Lamar looking like he's another tier than Allen. I don't think it will be undeserved because Allen's an incredible player, but that's just my mindset with it. My offensive player of the year is Jamar Chase. Saquon Barkley is still obviously on the Eagles, but he's not going to get as much usage as he did last year. Justin Jefferson seems to be overlooked in these conversations, so I feel like his expectations are too high for him to actually receive recognition. And I think other players just don't have the name value, or I don't think they're going to have as good of a year as Jamar Chase, who may not have the Triple Crown, but he's going to still have an all-pro level year. And it could even be kind of a makeup vote for not giving it to him last year. So I do think that Jamar Chase will win Offensive Player of the Year. Over to the defensive side of the ball, my Defensive Player of the Year is Jared Verse. This is because Defensive Player of the Year is usually given to a team that has a really high record and a really high-ranked defense. The Steelers and the Browns, if they don't make the playoffs like I predict them to, they're not going to get it because TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, I think, are past the point where they can carry a team to the playoffs. And other guys like Jalen Carter or Dexter Lawrence, they're not going to generate the numbers, or it has to be a guy who's going to generate numbers and is going to be on a playoff team. And I think Jared Verse, he's such an electric defensive player. He's going to have the numbers. He's going to have the impact. If the Rams, even if Stafford doesn't play, if they're able to make the playoffs, it'll be because Jared Verse leads this defense to maybe like an elite status. And I think he's going to take a step to being one of the best defensive players in the entire league. That's why I think he's walking away with this award. Now to the rookies. My Offensive Rookie of the Year is Travis Hunter. He's going to be more on the offensive side, but he's still going to play 2 ways. The voters will definitely want to give it to him at least once if he plays both ways, just because Travis Hunter's such an anomaly. We've never seen a player like this in the modern NFL. Even if he only has like 1,200 yards or 1,000 yards, just the idea of him doing this while also playing on defense is going to make the voters want to give maybe both awards to him, but I think there's a better chance that he walks away with just the Offensive Rookie of the Year. The Defensive Rookie of the Year for me is Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter is now alongside Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence on already what was one of the better defenses in the league. I think he's going to have the numbers. He's going to be an absolutely electric player. Being beside Dexter Lawrence is an absolute cheat code. And I just don't think there are other defensive rookies with the upside that Abdul has this season. That's why I think he's going to win this award pretty comfortably. My coach of the year is Dan Campbell. Losing both of your coordinators and still being able to produce a monster season that I think the Lions will have will propel people thinking that Dan Campbell, it wasn't just a product of Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. He's finally going to get the respect that he deserves. And when it comes to the new coaching candidates like Kellen Moore and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, I just don't think that their teams are going to be good enough for them to actually get the recognition. And even if the Vikings are a good team with J.J. McCarthy, Kevin O'Connell, I don't think he's going to be a back-to-back winner. I don't see them actually giving it to him. My comeback player of the year is another Lions person. It's Aiden Hutchinson. He's going to be able to carry the Lions to having an actual solid defense compared to what they were at the end of last year. And overall, Aiden Hutchinson is going to have the numbers. He has the narrative of coming back after having a gruesome leg injury. So I just think he's going to return to his all-pro caliber self. And I just don't really know what other guys will be able to come back from either being terrible and then producing or from another injury. I just think Aiden Hutchinson is the biggest profile player, and he's the more likely guy to return to his former self. And finally, we have the Tank Champions. This is where I talk about the Saints. The Tank Champions are the team that's going to win the number one overall pick, in my opinion. And for me, it's the New Orleans Saints. Spencer Rattler's their quarterback. That's the only thing that I should be mentioning. Spencer Rattler is not good. Kellen Moore, I don't think will be a very good coach. Their talent is just, I don't think it's really anywhere to be found. Chris Olave's a nice guy. But overall, just having Spencer Rattler as their quarterback or Tyler Slough just give them maybe the lowest floor in the NFL and maybe the lowest ceiling. Their schedule isn't as hard as the Giants, and they're not in a tough conference like the Browns. But even then, those guys have players like Myles Garrett and Dexter Lawrence and I guess Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco who can win them games out of nowhere. And the Saints just don't have that, in my opinion. They're going to lose, in my opinion, every single game of the division. Anyone that they play should be immediately favored. And if it's even close, if it's a close game heading into the fourth quarter, I'm going to put all my money on the Saints losing this game. So it's going to be very historic and poetic when the Saints land Arch Manning to potentially ruin his career. But I'm just really, really low on the Saints, and I honestly don't want to watch them, but I might actually have to if I want to make more content and reviews on them. But anyways, that is all for today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this first video. I'll be making a lot more. I'll be making videos throughout the NFL season, reacting and predicting everything that's happening on a week-by-week basis in the NFL season. So I'll see you guys tomorrow where I have my week 1 predictions. Kickoff is finally here. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.